Hey, welcome to the Cory Morgan Show for mid-August. We're getting into the political season. People are finishing their vacationing and starting to pay a little attention to the political gong show that's happening around them. It's annoying to most people, but it gives me lots of stuff to rant about, so I kind of appreciate it anyways. I got to start, of course, though, with getting the important stuff out of the way. I got to thank those who have been subscribing to the Western Standard. It's been going fantastic. Subscriptions are going up. More and more people are paying attention, realizing there's good media to be had out there. You can get good news. You can get good commentary. If you haven't subscribed already, go to the westernstandardonline.com and take out a membership. Subscribe. It's a free trial for a little while. I'm certain you'll check it out. It'll be worth your dollars to get in there and get those unrestricted stories, the commentary videos, and all that good stuff that's coming along. As well, I got to speak to our sponsors. We've been sponsored by Resistance Coffee. These guys are fun. They're really good. They got some coffees with some neat names, Liberal Tears, Defund the CBC, Empty Promises for their decaf. And it's not just cute names, it's good coffee. They're local coffee grinders. They ship it to your place. And what's best of all, they make no apologies for it. They are not a woke company. They take 10% of your purchases and they will give it to causes such as the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. They'll give, if you go to their website at resistancecoffee.com, you'll see which causes they give a portion of your purchase towards, rather than when you buy something and find out they're supporting some goofy left-wing cause that's trying to put you out of work or something. You don't have to worry about that with the Resistance Coffee Company. So check them out, and the first time you buy something from them, you'll get 10% off if you use the promo code Western Standard, all in one word. They'll give you a little box there when you buy it. Western Standard, all one word. 10% off. So hey, 10% of your purchase is going to go towards a good cause. 10% is coming off the price. Give it a try. It's well worth it. They'll be your regular coffee suppliers, and you'll feel good for drinking it. Our other sponsor has been the Canadian Coalition for Firearm Rights. These guys are out there. They're standing up. The Liberals since the 90s have been trying to take away our firearms through the registry with Alan Rock. Now it's moved on to orders in council. You're hearing some of those ads on the radio already from the Government of Canada. Pre-election time, they use our tax dollars to talk about how they're saving us from ourselves, and they've talked about how they've outlawed firearms that appear to be assault style and things such as that. It's ridiculous, and it's undemocratic the way they're doing it. They're doing it through orders in council. So the Canadian Coalition for Firearm Rights is out there standing up for us. They're actually taking the government to court on this. Go to their site, firearmrights.ca, and click on Why Join, and you'll see more details as to why it's important to support those guys. They're standing up for you. If you want to keep your firearms, you want to keep being able to use them, collect them, target, shoot, or even, as I'll talk a little bit about later, even in self-defense, you got to get behind these guys so they can make sure that you can keep owning and enjoying these pieces of property. So, as I was saying earlier, we're getting into the goofy political season. The mayoral race, it was just a great thing to see last weekend. A sea of red. The Liberals are out in full force, and it's overlapped with our municipal candidates. So we saw Jody Gondek, a familiar name. She was on council, out there at George Chahal's Liberal campaign kickoff for Member of Parliament. So she wanted to make sure to try and snap up a piece of that Liberal vote. But also out in the crowd there was Jeff Davison with his BFF Ward Sutherland, standing in that crowd of red shirts as well, trying to get a little nibble of that Liberal vote base too. It's good to see their true colors actually coming out. Davison is definitely coming out of the left wing. We can't afford more of this crap. We had enough of it with 10 years and Nenshi, but Davison wants to give us more of it. Gondek, we expected it of. Davison, we kind of expected it of, but still I didn't think he'd be so overt about it. But I guess glad for showing that. And of course, Naheed Nenshi was up there piping on and going on about how the Liberals are so important to Alberta and why we would be wise to support them. The Liberals, on the other hand, are not doing us any favors, at best, as they're pouring money into the Maritimes with Muskrat Falls project, and they're pouring more money into Quebec for their daycare program, which Alberta's already basically been paying for decades through equalization. They're saying we have to come to their terms to get any of those daycare dollars, even though we pay into it. We say we're not giving your money back to you until you do it the way we tell you to. So there's been a standoff there. As well, rather than supporting our industry like Muskrat Falls, in the east, they're saying we're putting together a transition thing. So all those oil workers that we're going to put out of work, and they plan on it, they want to put them all out of work. Even though the world wants more of our product, while demand for our ethically sourced petrochemical products is going to be going up for the next 20, 30 years. Any economist can tell you that. We're shutting ours in. And they're saying they can transition us. We'll get to work building windmills and solar projects, and that'll put everybody to work. It's a load of crap. But that's all what's coming up in this federal election. It's going to be an ugly one. It's going to be a regional one. And then we have the equalization referendum coming up during the municipal one. So you're going to get your fill of politics in this next 3 months. And we're going to be covering it for you. I'll be ranting about it as usual. I'll be watching some of the other stuff too. I mean, the groups are getting out there. The nurses are all out today. They're screaming because they want to make sure that they don't get their wages cut like the rest of Alberta had to do in this last, 8 years of economic downturn. Joe Vipon, the NDP doctor there, activist, who's been holding his little protests, trying to get this general strike going. He was saying he's going to bring the government to its knees. He's been day after day after day in downtown Calgary, 50, 60, maybe 120 people at tops. And the last one I went to, and some of the videos are already out, just a total gong show. But something was fun was watching the left eating their own, because Black Lives Matter with Taylor something or other, I don't even remember her name. She's one of their main representatives, and she's the one who's been standing downtown every day screaming to have the police disbanded, not just defunded. They want them gone. Well, Joe Vipon gave her the mic, said, you go on. And she gave an expletive-laden rant at his crowd out there. And since then, she's now said that Dr. Joe Vipon is a white supremacist, because you can just never be woke enough to stay in the good books of the truly extreme left-wing activists. And I tell you what, Black Lives Matters are extremists. Let's not beat around the bush with them. Let's quit playing the kid gloves with that group. These guys are way out in the fringe. And that display of their own divisiveness was fantastic. But that's fine. Maybe they'll just fall apart on their own. We got more important things to deal with. Now, I'll move right on into, though, I went out, something new for us. I did a field interview. I went to Eddie Maurice's place. And for those who don't remember Eddie Maurice, he was charged back in 2018. There were intruders came onto his property. He's in a rural property south of Calgary. He had his baby in the house. He came out, confronted them. In the altercation, there was a ricochet. The intruder got injured, and Eddie got charged. He was arrested. It took months and months in and out of court. All sorts of stress, all sorts of misery before the charges were finally all dropped. We've seen that recent case in Red Deer where they at least didn't even charge the homeowner. It was a refreshing change. And it was really worth going back to Eddie now that it's all done, because he couldn't really talk through all that time about exactly what happened at his place. Because when you're in front of the courts, your lawyers tell you, don't say anything. And there was a lot of armchair quarterbacks who came up with a lot of BS and saying, well, he should have done this, he should have done that. Well, I was on his porch with him. We got the footage of that. We showed how close those intruders actually got to his place, how limited his options were, how isolated his home was, and just chatted about the issue of self-defense, rural crime, and firearm rights in general. It was a really good talk. Have a listen to it, have a view, see what Eddie's up to these days, and I'll see you at the end of the show. Okay, Eddie, well, good to see you again, and thanks for joining me. It's been a few years now, but I'm sure the memories are still pretty fresh for you. Last time we talked was just audio on a podcast, and it's hard to explain, and with the issues being hot again, we've got rural crime going on, we've got a person who got injured by an intruder. Before we talk on it, though, I'd like to, we got the opportunity with the camera, and so I want to give the background on what happened to you that night that led to the nightmare of a year through the justice system there.
Yeah, so I guess it was 2018 February that it was about 5:30 in the morning. I got woken up, came out right by the front door here, that I noticed that there was lights on vehicles out front, and I retrieved the firearm, opened the front door up. I yelled at the criminals that were on the property at the time, and they had no interest in leaving. They continued on with what they were doing. So fired warning shot off at them and that to scare them off, to get them off the property, because I was home alone at the time with my youngest daughter, who was only 11 months old, still in the crib, everything else. And they took off. They ran off after that. And then 2 hours later, that's when the RCMP showed up on my property to arrest me. and then take me in.
And you'd already called them, right? Like you'd called after this happened. It's just it wasn't until the other fella that they suddenly rushed.
That's right. So I called, saying there's criminals here. They're robbing me. I need some help. And then when he called 911 for an ambulance, whenever they took off to another place, that's when, they linked it, came out, then.
Yeah, so and since I'm here, I just wanted to clarify. We always had a lot of internet armchair quarterbacks. You weren't able to speak to any of this, of course, while it was going through the courts, because you can't talk to those things before it all happens. Now it's passed. You can kind of explain. Like one of the common questions was, why didn't you shoot shots in the air rather than warning shots into the ground? And as we can see here,
as clear as day, I'd be shooting into my roof on the porch. So,
and I mean, you do have neighbors. They're a ways away, but it'd be irresponsible to be firing a firearm outwards as well. I mean, you don't know where you're.
Absolutely. So the safest direction was into the ground.
Yeah, and with the gravel drive, it led to a ricochet and
exactly
the accident.
And it would be if they would have just taken off when I started yelling at them, then there would be no need for any of it.
Yeah, and as the courts and police and everything, I mean, your intent wasn't to come out and shoot people. I mean, if it was, and so something to point out is the range. Like this guy was right here.
Yeah, he was literally 10, 15 feet right away at the vehicles. It's not a matter of across the yard, far away. There's a lot of people saying, well, you can't chase people in that. No, this was the front door of the house.
Yeah, so just for people viewing and people listening, I mean, think of how intimidating that is. You're on your front steps. It's 5 a.m. Your child's in the house. These people who you don't know, who aren't going away, are this close in front of you. You're going to be frightened. You're going to be tense.
Yeah.
Either way, I mean, we'll just close off on how you did end up finally at least getting, the charges dropped and such with you.
Yeah, so then it was about 6 months, and then finally Crown, they found no chance of conviction. They dropped the charges. Everything was done and let go. And then everything kind of just ended after that. It was
until the civil case, which came along, and
a year later, then the civil case where he tried to sue me again for the injuries that occurred on the property, and then there was another court ordeal after that.
Yeah, and just to clarify, so that got dropped. They backed off. They realized, again, this is ridiculous. People are getting pissed off. He's not going to win this. And that came to an end. And there was some legislation brought through, because people got confused with that. They were saying, wasn't there new legislation when the recent one happened, where people were allowed to use a firearm? But that's not the case. The legislation just meant they can't sue you if they were trying to rob you and they got hurt, right?
Exactly, yep. So the legislation that the government brought into place was that if there's a criminal that has been criminally charged, cannot sue the landowner for any injuries that occurred on the property. So it's the same thing if they break your window, cut themselves. Before, I guess they could have sued you. Now they can't. So,
yeah. Well, and as ridiculous as that sounds, we've heard of so many stupid lawsuits out there. As if you can't victimize a homeowner enough times, here's another way to do it. So, getting to more current things, and that's part of why I wanted to talk to you. I mean, somebody went through something pretty similar in a sense of a home invasion. It was in Red Deer. People have probably seen that in the news recently. The man came home with his daughter from camping. There was a gentleman passed out in his house or sleeping in there who grabbed a baseball bat, then attacked him. In the struggle, the homeowner was injured. His thumb was crushed. He got hit in the ear, I guess. He might be deaf over time. We'll see. I mean, so this is very violent. And he did manage to get a hold of a shotgun and shot the intruder, and the intruder died. Something that was different, though, was the police, after a few days investigating, decided not to charge him. Do you think in the case of like your past precedent and possibly even the Stanley precedent that the police are finally getting to a place where they're recognizing a homeowner's right to defend themselves?
I do. I absolutely believe that. It's, one of the biggest issues that came out of my case is I was charged before forensics was even on the property to even do a proper investigation. One of the things that I was actually really surprised with was the RCMP actually did their due diligence properly and didn't charge the homeowner right away under the assumption that he just did it. They did the full investigation to actually bring out the evidence to see what is really happening and then make a judgment call on that.
Yeah, whereas in your case, they arrested and secured you before even really investigating or doing anything. They presumed you were dangerous, guilty of something, and took you in.
Absolutely, 100%. In my circumstances, I was arrested, taken into Oktotoks jail, charged before even forensics was even on the property.
So this has led to a lot of questions. I wrote a piece on it at a different publication recently, but in that, I mean, it's good to see the police are recognizing perhaps it's not worth pursuing the charges. I mean, they do want to charge. That seems pretty clear. But they realize they just can't get a conviction through the court. But I think what we really need is some laws to clarify our right to defend ourselves and our property, I would think.
Yeah, I think so. Like it comes down to that case is, if you're too far away, police aren't present, they can't get to you in a reasonable amount of time, what can a homeowner actually do to protect themselves and their family when someone is attacking them?
Yeah, and again, that's part of why I wanted to come out and talk to you. Like, it just helps. Maybe we got a lot of urban listening and viewers who just don't necessarily understand. It's different when you have a neighbor 10 feet on either side of you. It's different when you know the police are going to be there within 5 or 10 minutes. We're in the MD of Foothills, where the average response, I live in the MD as well, is 40 minutes. So, I mean, if you lock yourself in your house, you better really hope these guys don't want to come in.
Well, and then it comes down to the same case is you have to make a mental decision is, are you going to wait to sit there, be on the phone with the RCMP while someone's coming after you? Like, again, the guy in what happened up in Red Deer is a prime example. Is he supposed to just run around, try to talk on the phone, try to get the police to come? There's someone in there attacking him. He has to defend himself. There's nothing he can do.
No, I mean, you've got seconds to act, not minutes. It's not, you see, pardon me, sir. No, hold off on the robbery. I gotta get my phone and call the police. It's not a reasonable. Something that seems to be a common thread in a lot of these too, in the cases of Ryan Watson, I think was the clown who was coming around here.
Yes.
I don't think they gave the name of the gentleman in Red Deer, but these were addicts, the people with some serious problems. That, I mean, people have to realize that you can't reason with somebody if they're wired up on meth or some of these other items as well. Like, it does make for dangerous people. They aren't just harmless thieves.
No, exactly. And again, at the time, they're not announcing that they're on drugs or what they're doing, what their intent is or anything. Just like Ryan Watson, who is one of the criminals that was here, he was for 2 times probation violation already. So he's been previously charged. He's been through the system. He was charged 6 weeks later after being arrested from this incident too. Mm-hmm. And then it was the same case up in Red Deer. The guy is a repeat offender.
Well, and in Red Deer in that case, I don't know if you saw those details. So in the days prior, he had broken into the house once. The police picked him up, took him to the Howard Johnson, where he'd been living apparently. He's living well, or was. He's not living anywhere now. Then he came and broke in yet again. Like, he had something wrong with him, obviously, but he came back to that same house. I guess he used to reside there as a renter or something in the past, and he just felt drawn to it. But the second time he came, the landowner's children locked him out, and he was beating on the door. He did property damage, and the police picked him up and took him away again and put him in the hotel again. Didn't charge him. No charges. Like, what does it take to get a charge, or what evidence that maybe this person needs to be secured?
Well, and that's a big problem in the system is the catch and release, where they're not actually holding someone who obviously has intent to come, to cause harm, to do damage, that needs to be properly put somewhere, assessed, and figure out what needs to be done with that person.
Yeah, and it is a tough job. The police have a tough job. I mean, you don't want to lock up every addict who's being a bit of a pain. Unfortunately, there are so many of them. We can't lock them all up. But these cases, these repeat ones, I mean, the woman who was with Ryan Watson, she had quite the checkered history. I mean, she was in 2 different police chases in her past. One where she smashed through an old TV set in Saskatchewan, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the corner gas set.
Kind of bizarre, and we laugh about it, but I mean, this is a dangerous person. She's doing high-speed chases. She's and this is chronic. This is over and over again. And homeowners are expected to just sit and keep taking this abuse from these people.
Well, and that's what they're saying is just lock your doors, stay in, call the police. But if someone's going to be coming through that front door, then you got no time. If, like you said, the average response time in the MD is 40 minutes. What are you going to do for that 40 minutes while you're sitting and waiting?
Yeah, and we had a lot of town hall meetings, and there was a lot of activity. I mean, the good side, I guess, that could come out is your case highlighted. I mean, you went through misery and hell and stress, but it did bring the issue to a head. And a lot of frustrated people, I was at those meetings, were asking police officers, what can I do? And the officers would say nothing every time. There was one guy said, can I shoot the truck with a paintball gun? He said, no, if you did that, that'd be pointing a firearm. He says, it's just a paintball gun. Yeah, well, if they think it's a firearm, then it's considered a firearm. Like, you can't do anything that's ridiculous and it's not reasonable.
No, exactly, and that's where we do have self-defense laws in Canada, but they're not. There's that very gray area what you're allowed to do and not, and we need that more clarification, and we got to give homeowners more rights. That we're not trained police officers. We don't know how to handle a situation. We don't know what we're going to do in a situation when we're put in it. So you got to have that grace period of giving the homeowner the benefit of the doubt. High stressful situation, someone like myself, I was woken up early in the morning. You're tired, you're not thinking proper, things are happening. The case in Red Deer comes home, there's someone like you're not planning for this to happen.
Well, no, and you're not, a big MMA fighter or anything like that either. I'm sure you can hold your own and everything, but I mean, it's not reasonable to expect somebody to, physically grapple with intruders or use a minor form of defense. I mean, a firearm is what potentially can equal the field, hopefully prevent something. Like, I think, in your case, it's questionable. We don't know what those people were going to do had you not confronted and stopped it with a firearm. I think we can say with some confidence in Red Deer, he would have very possibly been beaten to death had he not actually managed to get a hold of a firearm. So, I mean, just some of those people have a real problem with firearms. We forget to mention using one for defense is a legitimate use of a firearm, and we have to drive that home, I think.
Well, it is, because the Red Deer case really spotlights that. Is you got a guy with a baseball bat that's coming after you. You got a kid in the house there too. What advantages do you have? What are you going to use to try to stop this guy?
Yeah, and just some urban people don't understand that. I mean, and I'm a rural person. We're not psychopaths. I mean, we don't want to go out and shoot every person who shows up selling Girl Guide cookies or a tourist asking for directions. But in an uncomfortable or dangerous situation like that, then yes, a firearm might be the appropriate means to respond.
Well, exactly. No one is ever using it as an intent to use it, but it's a tool that we have that we can use.
And and you can use it right or responsibly or wrong. I mean, had you or anybody else been shooting at them and they were driving away and down the driveway and they hadn't taken anything or threatened you, well, chances are you're going to be charged and not too many people have sympathy. I mean, it's a circumstance by circumstance sort of situation.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where they now hopefully really look at the situations, look at what the homeowner is dealing with, and really see through the homeowner's eyes of what they had to deal with at that time.
So with this recent case, your case, other cases, some discussion that's been coming up too is the finally getting on with perhaps forming an Alberta provincial police force. So we'll have a more closely tied community policing theoretically or hopefully. You had a hard time with the RCMP. I mean, there was a lot of things they did wrong. I mean, there's good things the RCMP do and there's some things that just aren't right, particularly with community areas. I mean, they're not from the area. They get transferred out here. But if a new police force gets formed, I mean, it's an opportunity that we can perhaps, change the culture of it, change some attitudes, change some policies. What would you like to see in a new force to maybe reduce these kind of problems like you had to endure?
Well, I think it just needs to be brought back is they need to get out to the communities more. They need to interact more. One of the problems with a lot of the police forces around is they're not out, they're not engaging with the public, they're not asking people, have you noticed anything? It seems like every time you talk to them or you want to talk to them, they turn around that you're the criminal in every situation. And you got to go back to how it used to be where you can approach them, talk to them.
Yeah, and it's challenging. I mean, I'll give a little credit where due. Like the person running our detachment in Turner Valley, at least when she first came out, seemed to really be trying to reach out and engage. But it's tough, and especially if she was transferred in, you're always coming from out of town. Like having a local person come in, you would think you've already got that advantage. You know the area, you know the ground, you know the atmosphere, the type of people, the type of local problems.
Yeah, and I think maybe, they start, if we bring in the provincial police force and stuff, is keep doing the town hall meetings. That's the best way to get to know what's going on in the communities, get people that you can talk to and everything else.
Yeah, and then law-wise, what would you like to see, perhaps in some legislation or things that could help patch those holes? I mean, again, right now we're kind of doing it in the chicken sort of way. Okay, we're just not going to charge because we know we won't get a conviction, but we know they want to. I mean, we should be able to enshrine it to feel a little more comfortable, I would think.
Well, I think it goes on both ends. I think we need to have more stricter penalties, obviously, for the criminals. We got to deal with this revolving door that they're arrested, they're released, they come back, they do it again. These repeat offenders need to be dealt with. And I was really pleased with how the RCMP handled the Red Deer case. I think we are finally moving in a better direction and able to deal with it better.
Well, and another note, that doesn't get covered is we have the right to protect property. I mean, in your case, you're defending yourself and your daughter, and in Red Deer, he's defending himself, but your property is at risk too. And people are getting robbed a lot in rural areas. And some people say, well, you just got to let it go. That one officer at the town hall meeting says, just stuff, and he almost got lynched in the meeting. It's not stuff. It's the tools of our trade. It's the stuff we had to work hard for. We're not rich out here. And insurance companies are even starting to refuse to cover some homeowners, because they've been robbed too many times. Perhaps some stronger protection of property rights.
Well, and that is a really big problem with rural people. Is I've had a bunch of people that have approached me over the years talking to me about their cases and being robbed, and a lot of them can't even get insurance anymore. So now they're struck with nothing. If you're told, well, just let that stuff go, you can't even have insurance to cover that anymore.
Yeah, and I don't think either of us want to go shoot somebody because they're running away with my chainsaw, but I think, I should have the right to go out and try and intervene, to stop it. And yeah, maybe and that's what they say is, well, that might escalate into something that's violent. Well, and that's unfortunate, but that's on the back of the criminal, not myself. If they would just leave my property alone, I'm not going to go and intervene, and perhaps with a firearm.
Well, and that's another good point with it all too, is they're the ones that chose to come on to that person's property. They know what they are doing. They know what their intent is. Yeah, you were coming in blind. We don't know. I mean, I've been lucky. The only thing that's happened in our place so far, I found the gas cap open. Somebody tried to siphon some gas one night, but you just never know when somebody's coming about what they're going to do. Yeah, exactly. Well, I thank you very much for chatting with me again. It's good to see you again. It's been a bit. I don't own the bar, so I don't get to see you down there in the pub anymore. And is there anything else you'd like to add while I got you today? No, I don't think so. Well, I really appreciate it. And, we'll talk again, hopefully, on rural crime or other issues, but not in a case of a tragedy. No, absolutely. Thanks. No, thanks, Eddie. So there you go. That was a great talk with Eddie. One of the things that you can't really see, but if you'd seen Eddie back in those days when things were going through court and everything else, he was so stressed. His face was pulled and pinched back. He didn't smile. You can see he's a bit more relaxed now. He's appreciating things as they are. He just really got put through the ringer for daring to defend his household and his family. I'm glad he still is up and about and chatting with us and, at least speaking out for positive changes. So yeah, in light of firearms and firearm rights, it ties right in with our sponsor, the Canadian Coalition for Firearm Rights. These guys are standing up, and we saw with talking with Eddie how important firearms can be for ourselves. And if you go to firearmrights.ca, the Canadian Coalition for Firearm Rights, these guys, and click why join us, they'll explain what they're doing, how they're standing up for your rights, and how they need you to help them so they can keep doing it. Because we're going to get disarmed if we don't stand up for ourselves. And once we're disarmed, well, we're at the whim of the types of criminals who showed up at Eddie Maurice's place or at that gentleman in Red Deer's place, and it's going to end badly for us. So make sure to stand up for your rights and help these guys stand up for yours. Firearmrights.ca. As well, the Resistance Coffee Company. These guys have been sponsoring us for a while. They make great coffee. They got those great names, those liberal tears, that black gold. And it's good coffee. You don't have to drink it just a virtue signal for a conservative cause. It's actually tasty. I've ordered it. You go there, 10% of your purchase is going to go towards non-woke causes. They're going to go towards causes that stand up for your rights, like the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. You go on their website and you'll see some of the other groups that they donate 10% of your purchases towards. And if it's your first purchase, you'll get 10% off if you put into the promo code Western Standard, all in one word, when you buy that coffee. And you get 10% off. So 20% of your purchase is basically a wash. You can test this out. It's good coffee. Make sure to go there. It's really important to support our sponsors. They support us, and then we can keep producing this content for you. So thanks for tuning in on this one, and I will see you on the next one.